So Capturing Christianity just posted an interview with philosopher Justin Mooney, and in this video, Justin Mooney says, hey, the problem of evil is still effectively unsolved, it's very difficult, we need some new ways to deal with it. So he presents a deontological free will defense, a deontological theodicy. And to sum it up, first watch the video, join Capturing Christianity's Patreon, support him, he's doing great work. To sum up the video, you have to understand that there's a distinction between deontological ethics and consequentialist ethics, right? So a consequentialist will say, listen, as long as the ends justify the means, you can do whatever it takes, right? If I have to beat an old lady over the head with a tire iron, but, 9/11 doesn't happen, I'll do it. That was such a crazy example. Whereas someone who's the deontological side of things would say, listen, there are certain actions that are just bad, period. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. It doesn't matter if the outcome is good or bad. It's wrong, period. So an intuitive one, right, would be like, it's wrong to torture a child no matter what. It doesn't matter if you save 10,000 people. It's just, you don't torture a child, period. That's what happens. So, if you have some level of intuition and agreement with the deontological side of things, then that actually can plug into a theodicy pretty well, right? Generally, the way free will defenses have worked historically is that philosophers say, this is the best outcome possible. The world we're in is the best outcome that God could have come up with. What this new view says is actually, this isn't the best outcome, right? It turns out that there are outcomes God could have done that would have been better. There would have been less suffering, less pain. But to do that, God would have had to do some action that is deontologically impermissible. In other words, for God to get to the place where this world is beautiful and happy and free of suffering, God would have had to do something very wrong. And God doesn't do things wrong, so he couldn't get us here. That's the basic outline of the argument, right? It's a new form. It's an interesting way to think about it. And sure, makes sense so far. Framework's good. The question that we're all asking, and you should be asking, is, what is this thing that God can't do? Right? Like, what is this thing that's wrong that God can't do? And here's what Mooney says.
If God were to sort of systematically intervene in the world to prevent people using their freedom and their natural abilities to perform morally horrendous actions, this would result in something like a dystopian police state, or that's what it would be like. And it would be an affront to human dignity.
His claim is that if God were to prevent evil, it would be bad because it would feel like we're in a police state. It would be ethically wrong. It would be an affront to human freedom. And that wrongness is deontological in the sense that it doesn't matter what the outcome is. You can't do this thing. You cannot mess with people's ability to do the things they desire. Now, I don't think this works. And I think it's very far off from working, to be honest. I'm going to give a few critiques here and some suggestions on how to try and salvage this. Right, the first one, play this clip.
What if someone was trying to kill someone with a knife and God just turned the knife into putty? You're saying that this situation where God intervenes in this way would be sort of an affront.
That seems tricky, right? Would it really be? I mean, is God required to maintain our ability to murder? Right? What exactly is the problem here? How would that be an affront to human freedom? Flesh that out for me, right? Because as someone who grew up Christian, Christians believe that kind of thing happens. Just to be clear, in the Bible, Paul gets released from prison at some point, right? Isn't that an affront to the prison guards to prevent them from keeping Paul in prison? It happens. So you cannot say that a single case of that is deontologically wrong. You can't make that claim because God has done it. And if you believe that God still does miracles today, and you listen to any Christians who tell you incredible stories about the time the gang guy tried to shoot him in the trigger jam, if you believe anything like that, which, again, 90% of Christians do, that statement doesn't follow. It can't be the case that God preventing one person from committing a murder is deontologically impermissible. It can't be the case because God does it. Second clip.
2.
Yeah, and part of the idea is that, like, well, surely it's okay for us to do something. Like, if I can prevent, if somebody's like about to stab somebody else and I'm in a position to prevent it, of course, not only can I do that, I should. But Reeton's point is like, well, but once we're talking about an omnipotent being with unlimited resources, the situation is different.
Justin puts it like, he says, you know, there's a distinction that happens, right? Where it's good when humans try and prevent all evil, it's good. But when an omnipotent being does it, it crosses over into some now morally wrong route. It's now morally wrong. So the question we have to ask in response to this is, okay, you know, what is that distinction? What is it that suddenly it becomes wrong for an omnipotent being to do? What is that? And here Justin taps into our intuitions that, you know, if you imagine a police state, it's bad to have the feeling of someone watching over your shoulder the whole time, right? Think like Big Brother and you know, everyone's surveilling you. That seems like it's probably a bad thing. And I would agree. That's probably a bad thing if Big Brother's doing it. But again, this is literally true that that's what God does. Just to be clear, there is no surveillance system. There's no Big Brother that is more thorough than God. God actually knows your thoughts, right? God knows your thoughts. God knows what you're going to do. God knows what you have done. So trying to tap into our intuition that surveillance is spooky doesn't seem to really be a very strong argument here, because God is the ultimate form of surveillance, right? So that can't be it. It can't be. So we've gone through two options of what it can't be, right? It can't be, the problem can't be that, the thing can't be that God can't stop a single crime, because he does stop a single crime. And it can't be that it would be like being surveilled, because we're already completely surveilled by God, right? So again, what is it? Here's a thought experiment, right? Imagine that you had a superpower. You were a superhero and you had a superpower, and your superpower was you could look at a building, and just by shooting your special evil brainwave, you could make everyone in that building die or have incredible pain. Okay? Okay. So that scenario I just described is logically possible. Right? Like, just to be clear, there's nothing logically impossible about that. God could actualize that if he wanted to, okay? But he didn't. Just to be clear, no one has that power. Now, if a really bad person, like let's say someone who wants to commit murder, if they walk up onto the top of a mountain overlooking an elementary school, and they go like this, and nothing happens, does that feel intuitively like God is in some negative way preventing that person from having the freedom they want? No, of course not. There are tons of things that God could have given us the power to do, but chose not to, and none of them feel like God is preventing us from doing something. Right? God just designed our nature in such a way that that's not something we can do. So why didn't God design our nature in such a way that we couldn't commit murder? Right? Like, it seems very simple to me that God could have just designed people in such a way that no one has the guts to murder someone. Like that, it never rises to that level. It's never something you would even think about or consider. Like, no one's hatred or anger would rise to that level to murder someone. And it seems like in the same way that God could prevent us from having psychic powers to kill school children, and it doesn't feel like we're lacking freedom. It seems also like God could prevent us from ever having the will to kill, and that wouldn't be a lack of freedom, right? I mean, what's the difference there? And there are other options too, right? Like maybe it turns out that human bodies are such, there's some physical feature of human bodies such that humans can't kill each other, right? Maybe that's a thing. It seems like God could very well prevent evils in such a way that doesn't feel limited. And the other way to look at this is there's nothing wrong with limiting really bad evils, right? I mean, who's going to complain when all the school shooters' guns jam? Who is going to complain? Is the ACLU going to come and go to God and say, this is unfair. I don't have my full freedom. It's like, what? And remember, by the way, just to be clear, I'm not putting forth the idea of universal prevention of evil. This whole video starts with the idea of gratuitous evil. So again, gratuitous evil, we can include things like school shootings, but we don't have to include things like white lies or even lying, right? Who is going to be mad when God fully prevents gratuitous evil? Who's going to be mad? Who's the guy who's going to complain when the serial murderer, his knife melts like putty? Who's the one who's going to go, God? The serial murderer. But his opinion clearly doesn't matter because he's trying to murder someone. So what is the problem here? What is the problem? It just seems very challenging to try and lay out. Here's what an apologist would have to do, right? What an apologist or Justin or whoever needs to do is they really need to flesh this out more. And they need to come up with a way to tap into our intuitions about police states in such a way that it's obvious that if God started doing this strategy, it would be like a police state. Because again, right now, nothing changes. One of the bad things about police state is that you're surveilled all the time. That's already the case in Christianity. In the end, I think the framework of a deontological theodicy works. I mean, I think any framework of theodicy could work. But in the end, the details always fall flat. And that's what happens here.